Hello class, this is Mr. Gutierrez and I'm going to be going over your agenda for the week of May 18th again. So as usual, I'm going to have the video with teacher narration along with the slides on this link here, so you could just go ahead and click on that if you want to listen to it. If not, you're free to just go over the slides by yourself by clicking on this link right here. So let's get started here. I'm going to read the instructions here for point number 3, which is to complete the Gettysburg Address worksheet linked below. This is going to be due on May the 22nd. So let's go over the instructions and what your assignment actually looks like. So the Gettysburg Address was the speech given by Abraham Lincoln. And this is a very short speech, one of the shortest speeches that a president has ever given. It was about 2 to 3 minutes long. As you can see here, it starts from here and ends right here. So you're gonna have to read that whole thing. And on the box over here to the right, there's instructions that you're gonna have to follow. So let me read those to you real quick. For number 1, in paragraph 1, you're gonna highlight the phrase Lincoln borrowed from the Declaration of Independence. So this is the first paragraph, which is very short, and it reads, "Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal." So here you would determine which part of that was taken from the Declaration of Independence and simply highlighting it. It's kind of like we're annotating the document. For paragraph 2, we are going to underline the purpose of the the gathering at Gettysburg when Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. So you're reading the second paragraph and you're going to underline the purpose for this Gettysburg gathering. Number 3, in paragraph 3, you're highlighting who Lincoln gives credit for already consecrating the ground at Gettysburg. Number 4, what does Lincoln say is the great task before them? Here, what you're going to do is you're going to circle one answer below and underline the part of the speech where it supports your answer. So here are the 3 choices that you have. You're going to circle either A, B, or C, and you're going to find support for your answer, which you're going to underline once you find it here in the speech. Number 5. So number 5 is referring to the first sentence. So a score is 20 years. So where it says fourscore, so fourscore and 7 years equals what? So this speech was written in 1863. Therefore, fourscore and 7 years ago was, and you're going to answer that question. So it's just a little bit of math, but you're just going to be able to determine what he means by fourscore and 7 years ago. Number 6, what does the speech say the soldiers were fighting for? And finally, number 7, what is meant by government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth? So again, you're just reading the document and you're annotating and answering these questions. If you have any confusions, always feel free to just send me a message and I'll help you out. So let's go back to the agenda here. For number 4, you're going to watch America, the Story of Us video, and you're going to complete the video guide, which is linked here. Again, that's due on May 22nd, like the answer for the Gettysburg Address. So here's the link to the video, and this is what the video guide looks like. So I'm going to pull it up real quick for you. So you're going to start off by putting your name, your period here, and you're just going to watch the video and answer the questions as you're watching, going along with the video. So the Civil War is the blank in American history, and just answer these short questions, fill in the blank, and there's only 8 of them. So you should get through that fairly easily. And yeah, so now we can get started with the slides. Again, you have optional assignments too. So throughout the PowerPoint presentation, you're going to see a couple links that are here, but also in the slides. So you can go ahead and access those for your own viewing pleasure. And as always, you're able to attend our Microsoft Team meetings on Thursdays for our period They're going to be every Thursday morning at 11 in the morning. And also you can sign up for office hours. So on that note, let's get started with our PowerPoint here. So we're continuing talking about the Civil War. And last time we left off on the Emancipation Proclamation, which was the document or the executive order that Abraham Lincoln gave, which essentially freed the slaves in the Confederate States. So let's move along here. So for the sake of time, we're going to talk about one of the biggest battles of the Civil War, which was the Battle of Gettysburg. The Battle of Gettysburg was basically a fight between Confederate General Robert E. Lee, which is here, right here in the gray, and Union General George Meade, which is seen right here in the blue. What happened was, oh no, let me go back. Okay, so what happened was General Lee decided to invade the northern states, and he took with him 75,000 troops. And he was facing up against 90,000 troops in the Union. Remember, we talked last week about how the Union had way more people, they had way more resources to fight the war, so they were pretty much outnumbered in many of the battles. But what made the Gettysburg Battle one of the bloodiest fights in the Civil War was the fact that it lasted 3 days. And there was fighting day and day and night, which was somewhat unusual for the Civil War. A lot of the battles took place during the morning and evenings, but not a lot of them took place during the nighttime, which is what happened here at the Battle of Gettysburg. So General Lee decided to invade the Union, which was only the second time that he had done that, and it was decisively one of the bloodiest battles of the entire Civil War. Out of all of the wars or battles fought in the Civil War, this was by far the one that had the most casualties. And it began in July 1st of 1863 and it ended in July the 3rd of 1863. And in the third day, the Southern Army tried to charge and try to defeat the Union Army, but ultimately they were defeated and they were forced to retreat. And this was seen as a turning point in the war. And the Civil War, either way, would continue for 2 more years. But this battle was seen as a victory for the Union states, and the Southern states would never invade the North ever again throughout the entire Civil War. And here's a video linked if you wanted to see a little bit more information, a little bit more in-depth detail about what actually happened. But let's move along here to the famous Gettysburg Address that we talked about a little bit earlier. So the Gettysburg Address was basically honoring the soldiers who died during the Gettysburg Battle. So this was given in September of 1863, a couple months after the fact, and Lincoln was honoring the fallen soldiers, the fallen Union soldiers that fought during this battle. And he dedicated a new national cemetery to their memory. And what's notable about the speech, like I mentioned earlier, that it took less than 3 minutes for him to give, which was a little odd because the first speaker during this event was Edward Everett, and his speech went on for about 2 hours. So people were kind of surprised that the President of the United States would just go up there and speak for about 2 minutes. But ironically, this speech would be known as one of the most famous speeches a president has ever given in the history of the United States, frankly. So ironically, here Lincoln stated that the world will little know nor long remember what we say here. And like I just mentioned, it turned out to be one of the most iconic speeches that President Lincoln would ever give in the United States. So here's some more information that you can click on if you want to know a little bit more about the Gettysburg Address. But again, for your assignment, you can read the entire Gettysburg Address, and just get a feel for what he's saying, what the key components are, and how it relates to the Civil War and his vision for America as the Civil War still rages on. So the next topic we're going to talk about here is the Appomattox Courthouse. What this was basically a meeting spot for General Lee and Ulysses S. Grant, where the South would surrender to the North, essentially ending the Civil War in 1865. So this Appomattox courthouse was the home of a gentleman named Wilmer McLean, which was located in Virginia. And on April the 9th of 1865, the Confederacy formally surrendered to the North, ending the war. And General Ulysses S. Grant, seen here in the blue, was actually pretty generous with the terms of disengagement of war. So they allowed Southern soldiers to return to their homes peacefully. And this was pretty significant because if you think about the idea of turning against your own country and fighting a war against the United States, that's what is considered to be treason because you are betraying your own nation and waging war against it. So there are crimes that go against treason, which is normally imprisonment or death. But under these grounds of surrender, General Grant allowed General Lee and his soldiers to return to the South and to their homes peacefully. And finally, the last slide we have here was Lincoln's assassination. So here to give you a little bit of a background story, Abraham Lincoln, after the war had finished, decided to go out with his wife here, Mary Todd Lincoln, and they went to Ford's Theater to catch a play. And the person here you see goes by the name of John Wilkes Booth. He was a famous actor at the time. And by actor, I don't mean that he was in movies because, this was way before that time, but actors would go on stage, like in Broadway plays and things like that, and would act to a live audience. So he was well known for his acting, but he was a staunch opponent of President Lincoln. He believed that he was a tyrant and he disagreed with his policy about emancipation. So he was a notable anti-slavery racist, and he was only emboldened and angered by President Lincoln's decision to free the slaves, and he just felt him, along with another group of conspirators, wanted President Lincoln assassinated. So what he did was he snuck up to the presidential booth and fired one shot to the back of President Lincoln's head. And seen here is President Lincoln's bodyguard who confronted Booth and was actually stabbed, where you see here a dagger on in his hand. And after the fact, John Wilkes Booth actually jumped off of the presidential box and onto the stage, where he screamed "Sic semper tyrannis," which is a Latin phrase for "death to tyrants." But eventually he ran away, but he was ultimately captured and executed for his crimes. But most importantly, what we think about now is just the legacy that Abraham Lincoln left, which was emancipating the slaves and putting forth the 13th Amendment in January the 31st of 1865, which abolished slavery all throughout the United States. So with that in mind, that is the end of this slide or this presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know.